Hello everyone, Alec Alger the SideQuest Gamer here, and with the Veyron's Wrath review finally finished, I can start the Mega Man Retrospective, the one you've all been waiting for since I announced it in January, and Part 1 will be released tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, Eastern Standard Time. Now, because I want to get all 6 parts done before September, I will focus on nothing but the reviews. Which also means that editorials and top 10 lists of that sort will be put on hold until the 6th part is completed. The reason being that September is my channel anniversary and I will be spending the first week of that for the annual Q&A videos. Don't ask your questions just yet, ask them when I actually make an update video after the Mega Man 6 review. So yeah, this will be exciting, but also time consuming since scripting, getting footage, and editing will have a short time span, and I really hope it does well. I was originally going to start a Patreon alongside the Mega Man Retrospective, but I decided to forget about that since I don't really want to deal with taxes and all that fun stuff that is involved with Patreon. So instead, if I get to 2,000 subscribers before September, I'll make 2 bonus reviews, Mega Man Wily Wars and Mega Man 7 reviews. How does that sound? Well, if that doesn't happen, I'll just review something else in September and save Wily Wars and 7 for next year, perhaps. Better yet, how about this? If I get to 1,700 subscribers before or around when Mega Man 6 is up, I will review Wily Wars after Part 6. If I get 2,000 subscribers before or around Mega Man 6 is uploaded, a Mega Man 7 review will happen in addition to the Wily Wars reviews. But because of YouTube's algorithm, the reviews may or may not do well view-wise. Mega Man videos do quite well sometimes, especially for my friend Jay, who reviewed the entire Mega Man X series and gained a cult following overnight by the time he made his X6 review. Now, I'm not banking on a spike that massive, but I do want to roll the dice and see if it'll happen. I do have like 1,300 subs currently, so if you like the reviews, please share them around. Show your friends, family, basically anyone interested in the classic Mega Man series. Sure, it's easy to say it's not about the views, but that's not entirely true. In fact, that's very contradictory to the point of YouTube. We make videos for others to hear our voice and all. I just want to entertain an audience. I could care less about ad revenue, but I do enjoy reading comments both agreeing and disagreeing. More so on civil disagreement, as other perceptions are quite interesting to me at least. But besides the Mega Man Retrospective, in other news, I'm also simplifying the verbal tier rating system from 30 values to just 11, because numbers just don't mean anything for something as subjective as enjoyment of video games. I use this system as part of a concluding statement. Some may argue that they're just replacements for numbers, and I would disagree. Numbers don't tell me anything because some people base these numbers on separate aspects, like totaling the scores they give to graphics, gameplay, music, etc., and just average them out, when that's not how I would personally rank a game. I despise the numerical rating system because many base their reviews around it. Games should be recommended based on the entire experience as a whole. You can't separate the parts equally because some parts are bigger than others depending on the genre. Would it be fair to give the gameplay of a visual novel game a 0 just because it's selecting dialogue? No, it wouldn't. That would be dumb. Same goes for platformers where the story is usually basic, so much so that it doesn't matter. So with that said, I'm going to explain how my new system works. Let's start off from the worst rankings to best rankings, for my new system at least, and some of my original ratings for games and examples I give have changed slightly in case you notice some inconsistencies with the original ratings. Hey, I'm human after all, and we all change our opinions slightly over time. The worst tier I can give to a game is Unplayable. A game so bad it's rage-inducing. A game so bad it's either unplayable because of its broken mechanics, or a game that's just so unenjoyable there's just no way to continue on further, which is usually caused by flawed mechanics. Games like Awesome Possum, Superman 64, and Bubsy 3D fall into this camp. These are examples on how not to make a game, although it's quite funny that Bubsy 3D and Superman 64, they were both games that were rushed out the door to please the publishers. The second worst tier is Horrendous. These games are so bad, but not exactly to the point of unplayable. They're near unplayable, but there's something little in there, but it's not enough to recommend to anyone, not even masochists. Games like Bubsy, Fractured Furry Tales, Mega Man DOS, and Sonic Blast come to mind because they're just nothing. But not in an extremely offensive way, but very offensive way, if that makes any sense. The third worst tier is bad. These are just games that are just that. They're bad, but not to the point where it's worth a conversation about. This is the end of the road of dislike, and past this point is the point of personal hatred for a game. Balls and Shrek Extra Large are these types of games that are just bad. They're mechanically broken, but there's something in there that's somewhat charming. In Shrek's case, it's Shrek with gross out humor, so it's amusing, even though it's amusing for the wrong reasons. And Balls is just, it's visually interesting, even though it's not great. And the fourth worst tier is Indecent. This is like the opposite of a decent game. These are just indecent games. I don't really like these games, but these usually have some good ideas but terrible execution. Something that's just not good because there's more going against it than there is good. Radical Rex and Game Gear Sonic 2 are good examples of this. Games I wanted to like, but because of their somewhat broken mechanics, it kind of hinders the whole experience. That's why I don't really like them. Indecent games are games that could have been fun, but the developers just weren't competent enough to deliver. Now that's for the bad tiers. Now let's move on to the mediocre tiers. The lowest form of mediocrity is a poor game. There are several types of games I can put on here. Games that just lack anything and could be technically sound, but because it's not fun or has uninspired elements about it, I would not like it as a result. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels and Final Doom the Plutonia Experiment I'd put here in a heartbeat, because it's all there, you can beat it, it's definitely playable, but that's just it. It's not fun. And now we're at the middle of the road, the mediocre tier. This tier is quite self-explanatory. It's for games that I don't either like nor dislike. They're just so middle of the road for me. Either half good or half bad games, or just games that are meh all the way through. Like Donkey Kong Land and Sonic 3D Blast respectively. Donkey Kong Land has some really fun levels and some really meh levels. And Sonic 3D Blast, it's not great, but it's just meh all the way through. Basically games that are just average. And now we move on to the highest form of mediocrity, okay. Despite society's negative stigma with an okay game, it simply just means it's above average. Games that have slightly more good than there is bad and deliver some of what you want out of a video game. Okay just means above average, and games like Oddworld Adventures 2 and Adventure Island 1 I'd say are just that. Games I'd play for a little bit and have some fun out of it. And now we move on to the good tiers, with the lowest form of good being a decent game. These are games that give you a lot of what you want out of a game, and there's definitely a lot more good than there is bad, but there is quite a bit of bad in there, causing the game to not give you exactly everything you want. Games like Metroid 2 and Kirby's Dream Land 1 I can describe as exactly that. Metroid 2, it's good, but some of the exploration is lacking, and the control is kinda stiff. And Dreamland 1 I can just say it's too short and could have been longer. These games are fun, don't get me wrong, but they aren't games I would call anything beyond just decent. And then there's the good tier of video games. It's for games that give you everything you want out of a specific genre. They could have a few flaws here and there, but when the game works, the flaws are crushed by the positives. Games like Spyro 3 and Crash 3 I'd put here any day of the week because that's how I describe those games. They're good games. They're not perfect, and I can point out a few negatives here and there, but I can tell you a lot more positives than there are the few negatives. But then there's the second highest recommendation I can give to a game. A great game. This tier is for games that not only give you everything you would want out of it, but also things you didn't know you wanted. Little conveniences here and there that just enhance the already good experience. Games like Donkey Kong Country 1, Doom 2, and Final Fantasy VI have succeeded in that regard for me. With Donkey Kong Country 1, it's already a solid platformer, but the music and visuals just enhance the experience even more to add to the charm factor. Doom 2 adds a double-barreled shotgun and more enemy types than Doom 1, making it a lot more fun and more hectic. And Final Fantasy VI takes RPG storytelling to a whole new direction, a dark direction that not many RPGs did before. And the highest honor I could give to a game is the Masterful tier. Games that are just so good, it's actually hard to find a negative in there. I mean, no games are perfect, but they come quite close to it. Games like Gunstar Heroes, Super Metroid, as well as Super Mario Bros. 3 I'd say fit in this category perfectly. Gunstar Heroes always keeps the level designs interesting, you're never bored with it, and the boss fights are fantastic. Super Metroid is quite atmospheric, and the level layout is phenomenal. And Super Mario Bros. 3 is a fun platformer that always has something new with its level design. Even if it's reusing it, they'll add new things here and there that'll just make it all the more interesting. I can't really find any negatives in these, because even their worst aspects are not bad at all. So yeah, that's my 11 tier ranking system from now on. It's simple, basic, and gets to the point. But why 11 points, you may ask? Well, because an even numbered rating system like a scale of 1 to 10, the problem with that is there's no room for mediocrity. There's nothing so middle of the road, because you either like something or dislike something in that case. I think the mediocre tier needs to be represented in some form, and this is just my way of alleviating that. It's nothing much, but if you want to know how it works, that's exactly it. It's such a small part of my concluding statement, but not to some. Anyways, before you go, I'd like to give a special shout out to Jay of Jay's Reviews for his spectacular all-inclusive Mega Man X retrospective, where he not only reviewed X1 through X8, but he also did the extreme games for the Game Boy Color. I recommend checking those out. It starts out a little rough given the time between his X1 video and his X8 video. But if there's something worth binge watching on YouTube, look no further than that, especially if you're a Mega Man X fan. But if you want to just watch a few episodes to see if you're into it or not, I'd recommend watching his X4, Xtreme 2, or X7 videos. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but that doesn't matter. They're quite informative to his point of view, and entertaining. So, that's all for today, folks. Thank you all so much for watching this update video, and remember to stay awesome!